hiring them and you have a relationship, and that relationship will help them get another better position or job after you, especially with younger workers and postdocs. They don't want to be in one place. The culture is not to be in one place for 12 years. It's 1 to 2 years. I see it all the time in people's CVs now. Postdocs are a little bit different, but they will leave and you will have to start over. So you need to approach this with a mindset of what your minimum is. Maybe it's 1 or 2 years, and build from there and try and get retention, which some of you talked about, and we'll also discuss that. So they will leave, but it is your job to try and aid retention, and they won't be able to do the job. We'll talk about that also. So who to hire and when? Do you want someone to do the work or lead the work? They're quite different roles, and most people don't span that bridge and do both exceptionally. You'll have someone who does both well. If you want someone to do the work exceptionally, they're probably not going to lead the group as well, because they'll be so busy leading that they don't have time to do the work. So really set up your expectations. You want them to do the work or lead the work primarily. What's your available funding, and for how long can you support this person? All these things play into your decision on who to hire. The main thing I want to hit home, and you will all know this if you do the Coursera or if you've ever spoken to me in your life, your hire is your responsibility. You don't just get to hire someone and go, you go do the work, and that's the end of that relationship. It's like having children. It's your responsibility. So you have to be invested to make this work out. Some of you might have seen this table before. I had a table with the PRA and the postdoc MD fellow band. Someone asked for a table that included a student, and here I've thought about both taking on a student as part of an academic program or a student worker. So their skill set for a student is generally low and increasing as you go through a postdoc or MD fellow. Now, there's no guarantee that postdoc or MD fellow will be very high in terms of skill set for what you need them to do. So they might still need some training also, but generally you will hire someone who really has some experience in what you're researching. The cost goes from low, moderate to very high, and nothing is free. So a student, if you think about taking on a student because you don't have much money, it's not free in terms of money, and we'll get further into what it costs in a minute. So students and PRAs generally require dedicated training and oversight. And for the fellows, it just depends on the background of the person. They might not need much, training at all, or they might need quite a lot, but then they can normally go on their own path. The management required, how much oversight you have to have and how many touch points for management you have to have, is very high for students, moderate to high for PRAs, and low for postdocs and MD fellows. They've got a path, they know where they're going. The time required also goes from high with a student, low with a PRA, and really high with fellows. And if you don't have time and you hire a postdoc or a fellow, there's going to be some issues for you. So be aware of that going in. And this is one that there's often some not copacetic expectations. How much time do you need for someone to devote to your work in your lab? A student is really limited. You have to tailor your work around their schedule. They have classes, they have projects, they have exams, they have whole periods of time. They're like, I can't come the next 2 weeks. So you have to tailor your work around their available time. PRA has all their time, 40 hours a week, sometimes more if you need it. And a fellow depends, it's moderate. MDs have clinic, but even for a postdoctoral fellow, they're working on funding applications. They have to have their own project. They're submitting abstracts, giving talks, and they need feedback on all of those, but they need time to do those. All those funding applications take a lot of time and energy. So they're not going to be in the lab. They're not going to be doing your work. They're going to be doing their work about half the time. The intellectual input to your group from a student is low, especially at the beginning. It can become moderate. PRAs I generally find moderate to high, but if they're new, fresh graduates, it can be very low. But fellows have extremely high intellectual input. And then the duration. One of the questions was, I want someone to stay. I desperately don't want to hire someone and have them go. Okay, if you have a student or a postdoc, they're going, and you know the time frame. A student, it's really short, a little bit longer for a fellow, but a PRA is indefinite, right? So it could be 1 year, it could be 12 years. You don't know, and you can help them decide that. All right, so we're going to do a pop-in. So open another browser or get your phones out, and please type in this address. There's questions there. So everything's anonymous. You can comment on each other's comments. And I'm asking, the first question asks, what is your primary driver from the table we just discussed when you hire someone? So Kathleen, can you give me a shout out when you've pulled this up so I can pull the pop-up? And can you, whatever browser you use, can you keep the pop-in open, please?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure. How does that work?
You just type this into a browser on your phone, or so pull up Explorer or Google.
Yeah, I have it up on my screen here.
And just type in this address. Sorry, they didn't do QR codes. I wanted a QR code, but they don't do them. That would have been much simpler. Did you get in, Fabrice?
Almost. I'm a very slow typer.
Me too. I hear you.
All right, I'm getting there. Thank you.
Okay, are most people in? Is anyone having trouble? Because I'm going to change screens. This is where it all starts to go crazy. So this is going to disappear. And maybe you could copy, maybe you could pop that in the chat.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. Can we put it in the chat just to... Yeah.
If you can copy it from the slides that I sent and pop it in the chat.
Yep, I am getting it in now.
Okay, can I stop sharing? All right. So now I'm going to take you to the pop-in. All right, so people are in because they're putting in answers. So most people are really interested in the skill set. Some people are, one person's interested in the time requirement. Thankfully, no one has yet just found out that I have no clue. You all have loads of money. No one's putting cost in here. That's great. Management required, yep. Especially if you don't have a lot of management experience, that's concerning. Okay, so for most people, most of you, skill set is actually going to be the most important driver. So the CV is going to be very important and the interview is going to be very important. Okay, the next question is going to be, what's the second most important driver? Okay, let's see. Cost. All right, so skill set and cost. Skill set, management required, and cost. Okay. All right, so that's great. So you have an idea of what your parameters are, and you need to know this for every hire before you start to think about the interview questions, because you need to know what you need to know about the person before you start the interview. So I'll go back to my lovely handy dandy presentation and we'll keep going. We're going to go back to pop-in, but I want you to take these things away with you so that you can formulate a plan before this hour is up. All right, so when you're preparing to hire, you have to write the job description, right? So you've just told me that the skill set is really important. So you need to delineate very carefully what skills are most important to you as you know, not required, but as additional information. You want to designate your interview panel. Don't go crazy. 2, 3 or 4 people who represent your group's border of interest. Remember, you're going to be there as well. So 3 people, maybe 4 is plenty. If you're someone who scored less than 80 for yourself experience with hiring, add someone with experience. Ask someone who's done this a lot of times to just join you for the interviews and get their perspective. And then you just send it to the departmental administrator. With the COVID hiring chill, you need to add at least a few weeks to get the institutional approval before it goes to HR, and it always spends a few weeks in HR. So just remember that right now. So with the job description, you want to list the specific duties. Always add other duties as directed by supervisor. If you don't add that and you have performance issues, you're in trouble. And you also just never want to hear, that's not part of my job. You know what? If someone says that to me, I'm going, here's your job description. I asked you to do it. Actually, it is. So that's the end of that conversation. You might not want to say it as bluntly as I say it, but you know, that's the truth. Now, for the qualifications, you cannot hire at this institution someone who does not meet the minimum requirements. So don't put anything in there that's a deal breaker, because you won't be able to hire the person. Everything else put as preferred qualifications. So all those techniques and skill set you were talking about would go under preferred qualifications. And here's an example. Whatever the degree is, a higher degree, a lower degree, proficiency in whatever you need them to have should be a basic. I asked them to demonstrate these in the interview. And someone asked about, you know, what if they can't work independently after training? I actually include this as a required qualification, so that if I do have performance issues, I can document those and say they are not meeting the required qualifications because they can't work independently. It's quite an important little tidbit. And then, you know, whatever else you need, you can put down in the preferred qualifications. This is just a brief example. I can provide more examples if people are interested. So then what you want to do is make a list of things you want to know about the applicants. Are you interested in teamwork, problem solving? You all said you're interested in experience with particular techniques or study populations if you're doing a clinical study. Some people need to know, have a lot of studies, so they need to know if someone can prioritize. Attention to detail. Do you need a lot of flexibility? And then make your list and write a specific question for each point on your list. I then make a matrix for use during the interview. It just keeps me organized, and especially on Zoom, it means that the 2 or 3 people who are interviewing with me have exactly the same thing in front of them as I do, and we can all compare notes later quite easily. And then provide an overview of the job and environment, but don't spend time selling the position. One of the most common things I see with people who are new to hiring is they're so excited about their job and they're so excited about getting help that they spend 30 or 40 minutes of the hour talking about their lab and how great it is and their work and how jazzed they are about the new grant. This is your chance. You said, a lot of people said they're worried about fit. This is your chance to find out about the applicant and assess fit. So if you spend most of the time talking about what you have to offer, you're never going to be able to do this. So just keep that in mind and stay focused. So this is an example. I just want to give you a concrete example of what I do. This would normally have, you know, the candidates' names up here. I've just put a few. You asked about some questions that would help assess fit. And here are some of the ones I use, and I'll give you ideas about what are red flags or green flags for me. Please list the 3 best and worst things about your current or last position or job. And even students can answer this. Some of these people were students. And if my job, for instance, this person says that one of the worst things is wearing a new hat every week. So if one of my jobs requires them to do a lot of varied tasks, it's going to be a bad fit. I know that. So this is not going to be a great candidate for one of my positions that requires work across a lot of studies. This person loves variety, energy, and completing projects. That's probably going to be good for them because they like variety. They like to go from thing to thing. So that's hitting a positive for one person and a negative for another person. The more that your job fits into someone's negatives, no matter how much you love them, no matter what their skill set is, it's not going to work out. I can just tell you from experience, it's not going to work out. So really assess what your main tasks are and how they fit with people's top 3 and bottom 3 things. What are the 3 most important features of a workplace to you? Okay, so positive, passionate researchers, communication, appreciation. If you know communication is not your strong suit, that's going to be an issue. You need someone who's going to communicate with you, but if some of us just aren't great communicators, and that's fine. A clear role, a good team, mission, team, respectful, effort. Okay, so there's no red flags amongst these people for me. But sometimes there are. Sometimes people want something. There are people who want constant positive reinforcement. I am not going to go every day and say, Fabrice, you're doing great. How are you today? You know, I'm going to check in weekly. I'm going to check how you're going. And if you're doing something great, I'm going to say, Fabrice, I'm impressed. Wow, I'm so excited about those data. Let's look at the graphs. You're going to tell that I'm excited, and I'm going to say you're doing great. But I'm not going to come every day. So I know that those people who want constant positive feedback, we are not going to work out. I'm very happy to give positive feedback, but not every day. Where do you see yourself? And people are really worried about folks leaving. I ask this straight up. I just say, where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? Do you have specific career goals, or do you want to go back to school for further training? If yes, what time frame? So this person tells me PhD in 3 years or so. That works for me. That means I've got them for a good 2 years, which is what I expect. This person just wants to have a good reputation in the field, and maybe one day, wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey, get an RD or PhD. Okay, so I might have this person for a bit longer. So I specifically ask that. And another thing with fit, everyone is so concerned about fit. And this number 7 is a good projector of that. Give me an example of a time when you worked as part of a group. I don't normally say, give me an example in the last 6 months. I don't say any example. When you work as part of a group, what was your specific role, and how did you personally contribute to the success of that project? Most people come up with this leader. I already have leaders in my group. I can't add another one. It just creates drama. Everyone wants to do the same, wants to lead everything. It's exhausting for me. But this person is an expediter and an organizer, and they wrote and collated. That's what I needed in this position. So that was really telling to me that this person was probably going to be a better fit than most of these. This person actually said they just liked having responsibilities of their own. So either of these people would have worked out. This person who wants to be the leader, the organizer, and do the most of the work is not going to fit with my team. I know this. This person was a great candidate, but was not going to be a good fit, honestly. I always give them a prioritization scenario. They don't know anything about this institution most of the time. They might know about your lab if they're interviewing for a postdoc. And I give them just a stupid scenario of someone can't come in, and you've got 2 participants coming in for a study, but they're at different parts. One's down at the Brain Imaging Center and one's on the CTRC. What do you do? And that's very telling about their logical thinking and prioritization skills. How do you rank yourself? I do little caveats too. So this number 9, I'll say, everybody thinks that they can multitask and they're great at it. Data shows that only 2 to 3% of people can actually productively multitask. So given that, how do you rank yourself from 1 to 10 in regards to multitasking? And give me a specific example from last week, not the last 3 months, last week. And not everybody needs to multitask. I just need to know, again, how they're going to fit with the team. This is another really good fit question. This person gets bored if there's no variety. So sometimes when you're doing data entry, there isn't any variety, and I need you to sit down and do that for 4 hours, right? And I think they're an awesome multitasker. And then another thing that's really important in terms of fit, especially if you've got senior people that like, depending on their style of how they're training people and asking people to do things, describe a time when your work was criticized and how you resolved that. Saying why you're right is not a good answer. But, you're learning about the candidate. These are all things that help you examine fit. All right, pop in. I'm going to give you go on, Ann.
Janine, Josie did ask a question a few minutes ago. How do you have a candidate demonstrate in the interview that they're able to work independently?
They normally can't, but I always say must be able to work independently after training. Most work is a combination of independent work and teamwork. I don't think there's anything we do in science anymore where someone does everything start to finish on their own. We're all taking different tissues or cells. We're all going to another lab to use a piece of equipment. We're always interacting with another clinical group to get extra samples from a clinical research study. You can actually formulate a question about I do have questions about whether people prefer to work independently or part of a team. And depending on the job, depends on what answer I want. And again, you can ask them to give you a specific example when their work independently contributed to the success of a project. And I'm going to challenge Josie wrote back in the pop-in right now. So I'm going to give everybody 2 minutes. And I want to ask you all to jot down, and then we'll put it in the pop-in. But these, you probably haven't thought about these things, so I want to give you a couple of minutes. What are the top 3 things that you want to learn about your applicants for your next job during an interview? Then I want you to formulate one valuable interview question based on one of these factors. Just one. So, Josie, I'm going to get you to try and formulate a question on how do you know the person can work independently.
Get a little bit of stretching.
Yep. All right, so is everyone ready? Oh.
Now that we've helped people customize and save with Liberty Mutual, we can finally do some beach reading. Other questions in addition to those during the interview. These are just some that answered some of your questions from the survey. All right, we're running out of time. Looks like some people finished. All right. So let's go back to our pop-in and look at the next question. Okay, what are the top 3 things you want to learn? Their approach and work ethic, skill set, work ethic, independence, hard-working, team player, attention to detail. I've got some notes on attention to detail later. You can ask them that in the interview. That's also a great question for when you check the references. Some people think I've met people who think they have great attention to detail and they're out of their minds. Out of their minds. But the people they're using as references should know.
Skills, goals, and attitude, exactly. Work ethic, skills, motivation, committed, work independently, provide an example. Okay, Josie's got provide an example of where you worked independently on XXX type of project or experiment. Yep.
Well, that wasn't me. All right, I don't want to take credit.
Oh, okay. You can also ask about troubleshooting. This experiment, if for lab jobs, I've often asked, you know, tell me a time when you had an assay that just wasn't working and how you resolved that, right? So that will tell you how they work independently. Did they just run to you, or did they check the controls? Did they, you know, look at the plate and figure out nothing was the right color? So probably it was the buffer or one of the enzymes in the buffer had expired. You know, that tells you whether they can work independently or not. Resilience, that's really important right now. Great, whoever wrote that. Okay, this is really great. Work ethic, attitude. Did I mention attitude? Love it. Really great answers. And you can see that you, as a group, we all sort of are looking for the same kinds of things. Honesty is very important to me as well. All right, and your questions. Describe a situation one of your someone did it. Describe a situation where one of your experiments or projects failed and how you recovered from this experience. So how you problem solved and how you recovered. Did you go into a hole for a week? And for postdocs, another question is describe a time to look at resilience. Describe a time when you submitted a funding application and you didn't get funded. How did you react? Some of us crawl into a hole for a week. Some of us crawl into a hole for a year. Some of us go get drunk. Some of us go to bed for 24 hours. Yeah. But really learning about how people cope is important, and whether you can cope with the way they cope is also key, right? It's not about how they cope, it's about if you can cope about the way they cope. I'm probably going to come in and complain to you for an hour. If you don't want to hear my wah for an hour every time I don't get funded, probably you don't want me to work for you. So this is really good. What interests you most about the position? That's one of my first questions normally. This happened to me on my grad school interview. Asked them to do a task that will assess their ability to problem solve. Great idea. Great idea. 5-year goals. Yep. I really like with how does it fit with your career goals. That's another version of finding out if they're going to go back to school or not. A little bit more subtle than mine, but almost everybody's more subtle than me, so that's hardly surprising. Could you tell us what, this is great. Some people will tell you this de novo. They'll say, I've looked you up on the website and I've read your papers. Be careful of flattery versus knowledge. Some of it's just flattery, and some of it is because they wanted knowledge and they wanted to know what they're in for. What does a successful work-life balance look like and feel like to you? Great question. Please describe conflict in the last 6 months and describe how you handled that situation, the outcome. Yep. All great questions. So if you like any of these, I think, you know, again, this is a chance to learn from each other. Steal them if you like them, adapt them to be your own. This is absolutely great. I'm going to steal one of those, by the way. So thank you. All right.
Janine, when we were looking at your matrix, Kristen Nadeau asked, are these all questions you ask in the interview in person, or also a document you have them fill out about themselves before the interview?
No, I never have them fill out anything before the interview. I don't want any spoilers. I want to see how they are thinking, right? Can they answer these questions on their feet? And quite often when I say, give me 3 examples of this, or 3 best and 3 worst, people go, oh, I've only got 2. And I'll actually pressure them. I'll say, no, you have to give me, I asked for 3, please give me 3. And I'll sit in silence for a couple of minutes. Again, it's about that puts them under pressure. Can they work through and think out a sensible answer sitting there? So there's lots of reasons to, most people go, oh, 2's fine. I'm not a person in real life, and I know this, and everybody on the call who knows me knows, if I ask for 3 and you give me 2, I'm not going to be fine with that. That's just not going to happen any day in real life. So why let it fly in the interview? That's giving a false impression to them of what it's going to be like to work together. So know yourself. That's also really important going into all of this. I personally don't phone screen because I want to actually hear their answers and see their thought process rather than their you know, Google skills. They'll just look up best answers. So then you get applicants for your jobs. The way I do this really quickly is to look at the CV first. If they don't meet minimum qualifications, you can't hire them. I personally have to have a neat and professional presentation. 6 different fonts, you know, colored stuff. I don't care if they're the most qualified person. It's out, right? They're going to represent me, the whole group. We're using shared equipment in other labs, in the clinic to screen patients. They're going to send emails to people, and I want them to look. I don't want to teach them how to send an email, right? If you do, that's fine. And if the skill set's more important than that skill, that's a skill to me that I expect people to have. I always look through for any extra helpful skills. And someone asked about how do you bring diversity, equity, inclusion into this? And, you know, we could spend 3 hours talking about this, so I don't mean to dismiss it. I really think that this is something we should talk about in a lot more detail with someone a lot more experienced than me and with more of a focus on this than me. But I would say one of the things I always fight for when I'm looking at admissions to programs is don't focus on GPA in school. It's a very American thing to focus on these things, I think, anyway, culturally. But that really weeds out some great candidates and really disadvantages some of the people in the underrepresented minorities. So don't focus on that. That's not the most important thing. In fact, I'm kind of suspicious. If someone went to Harvard and got a GPA of 4.0, I'm like, I don't think they probably spend all their time on their own studying. Is that really going to be a good fit? So I'd be suspicious anyway. And then I think the other thing that's really important is look for persistence of career path, especially in your fellows, but even in your PRAs and students. Have they tailored towards this? Have they kept going no matter what obstacles they have? Have they tried to figure out what classes would put them in a good situation if you're hiring someone new? What classes did they put together? Is it value added, and have they thought ahead? And do they have persistence? For fellows, this is really important. Everybody's had bumps and obstacles by the time they get to their fellowship. Persistence of career path is really important. And you know, the obvious one that there's lots of campus programs to help with is recognize and minimize your own bias. So again, I don't mean to minimize this. I think it's incredibly important and we should talk about it at great length. So I look at the CV first and then go to the cover letter. It has to be specific to this position. I again look for details of relevance, relevant experience added. And again, I look here for, are they planning further study or school? Most people will tell you in the cover letter. So that's a good place to look for that. And then the interview. So you have to figure out how many interviews to conduct. I have to have an amazing candidate to go above 3. Normally 3 to 5 people fall out after you've looked through the CVs and the cover letters anyway. I try and get it to 3. It's very time consuming. It takes a lot of energy. Don't interview 6 if you don't need to interview 6. If you can rule out 2 of those 6 just on paper, do it. Prioritize the applicants. And this is a place, people said, how many people should be in the interview? How many interviewers should you have on your panel? Should I have my whole lab? If your lab's 12 people, I'd probably say no. It's too many. You're not going to get a consensus. This is a place to get your top 3 or 4, or maybe 5, and go to lab meeting and say, here's the top 5 candidates. You can de-identify them. What do you all think? Because they'll tell you what they think are fit by seeing the applications themselves. And then you can maybe go from your top 5 or 6 down to 3, and everyone feels like they've had a part to play in the process. You need to decide on the format. There is something out there that a lot of people do where if there's 4 people and there's interview questions, you all go around. I ask question 1, you ask question 2, you ask question 3, you ask question 4. Then it comes back to me. That kills me. It's so slow. It's so tedious. If someone skips a question, nobody knows what to do and everyone's looking at each other. It's a shambles. I hate it. But it does look more like you're more of a team that way, right? So maybe you have 12 questions and 3 people. You each ask 4 in blocks. I personally just say who wants to ask the questions. One person asks them, and if anyone else has anything to add or follow up on, they jump in. And at the end, we say, does anyone else have any more questions for the candidate?
for things that they want to follow up on. But this fits your style. This is how you feel comfortable. So, but you need to decide a priori how you're going to do it and what you like. Again, limit the number of people in the room. As an interviewee, it's daunting to face 12 people. If you're in a room or even on Zoom, you don't even know what square to look at, right? My whole screen's full of people I don't know. It's very intimidating. You're probably nervous anyway. Just 3 or 4 people's plenty. It's not so overwhelming. So when you get to the interview, introduce everybody in the room or Zoom and what their specific roles are so that the candidate knows who they're talking to, not just the name, what are their specific roles. Start with an overview or introduction. So include specific details about the most important and frequent aspects of the position, okay? So just like in the job description, you're setting the stage for the questions you're about to ask the person. You're not asking them to go in cold. And people said, how do I set expectations at the interview? This is the place to set expectations. So part of your intro should be, what are your expected work hours? Are they fixed or flexible? So for my nutrition core positions, it's 8 to 5, Monday to Friday. You might have to work extra sometimes, but they're the hours you need to be available because we're a service core. In the rat lab, it's very flexible. I'm like, you know what? It's flexible, but don't just say it's flexible. Are you going to be happy with someone coming in and working 11 till 6 every day? Or do you want them there in the morning to fast the rats so you can do the experiment at 2? So when you say flexible, let people know. Is it flexible day to day, week to week? How often will they be coming in early or late or on weekends? You know, running the rats on the weekends, someone's got to come in. Is that going to be every Saturday? Is it going to be twice a month? Can they choose whether it's Saturday or Sunday? Give people some idea. Because again, if you want to assess fit, you have to make sure that your job's a good fit for them and they're a good fit for the job. We're so obsessed with people being a good fit for the job that we often don't think about it the other way. Is my job a good fit for the person? And that's where disaster happens. That's the area of pitfall. So really set the expectations here. And if I tell someone it's 8 to 5, Monday to Friday, and they're like, I don't like that. Okay, it's not a good fit. I know that right up front. Are they going to be walking in a single building or doing lots of walking around? I actually put this in there's a physical requirements section on the university job form. I actually put must be able to walk across campus up to a mile carrying boxes, because diets and supplies for studies have to go everywhere. And I also put that they must be able to bend and reach to clean. So no matter whether it's in the lab or nutrition or in the clinic, there's always things we have to clean. And there are people that do have restrictions on bending. So if you need someone to do those jobs, you need to put that in there. And say whether they'll work alone or as part of a team most of the time. Okay, there's a big difference between working in a team environment 50% and independent 50%. Or if you're hiring someone who's going to be doing mostly scheduling and data entry, they're going to be working alone 80% of the time. So you need to sort of lay that out for them. And the way I do this at the interview, this is a clinical example. I have a pre-clinical example as well. Someone who loves face-to-face contact, this would be okay. It's about 50% face-to-face contact. There's a bit of regulatory here. If someone hates regulatory, is this too much for them? Maybe, maybe not. And then a whole bunch of data entry and admin. So I give this to them at the beginning of the interview when I'm laying out what does this job look like. And here's the preclinical one, optimization and running new assays, some rat care and surgery, fair bit of data entry and analysis and coordinating what rats are in what rooms for what studies, and then a bunch of admin, okay, for these PRAs. These are PRA positions. I give this to them and discuss it and let them know sort of what's expected up front. Someone who loves patient care, and that's their jam, they love to face-to-face contact with humans. If I go back a slide, this is borderline good fit for them, because 50% of their time is spent doing something they like. The other 50% time is back of house away from the thing they love. That's borderline for someone who really wants a lot of patient contact. This also prevents the dreaded question at the end of the interview. You want to end the interview with, do you have any questions for us? The question everybody asks that makes my head want to explode because I've heard it so many times is, what does a typical day look like? There is no typical day in a research job, firstly, so I hate the question. But secondly, I've told them, this is what a typical breakdown roughly looks like. It will change from day to day. So if you ask me this question, that question is your question, you're out. And only one person has ever done it since I started doing this. So it saves a lot of time and energy on your part. You do it once, you don't have to hear that question at every single interview for the rest of your life. So the other thing that's important is to keep notes, and so you can discuss people later. If you're doing quite a few interviews or they're spread out, you won't remember very well. And schedule the interviews, if you can, in a limited time frame, and then leave a spare time at the end of the last interview so that you can discuss and compare quickly, and you can start honing in on the references. This is another place where you can examine fit. Maybe a little bit better for some traits than the interview. Always check all references. If you need to wait to check a reference, you do it. Because if someone isn't returning your call, there might be a reason why. Remember, the referee is busy. Stick to what you only need to know. Ask extremely specific questions so that the answer can't be ambiguous. So if you ask, is someone punctual or reliable, and the answer is yes, ask a follow-up question. How many times did they call in with less than 24 hours notice in the last 6 months? And this can be really revealing. People go, oh, actually, they do that about once a month. Or, oh, that happened a few times just recently, even though they said they're totally punctual and reliable. So ask a follow-up question. Try not to get stuck in that yes-no question. And always finish with, if you had a position available right now, would you hire this person again? Some people are less than enthusiastic everyone will say yes. Well, not everyone, I've had no's. But most people will say yes, but look for their enthusiasm. All right, one more quick pop in. So go back to your pop in. Okay. Is this a suitable reference check question? Is he or she, okay, so what's wrong with it? You can comment on this, so put in comments. 3 is 2.6, yeah. Okay, so what would you ask instead? What do we need to find out here? Or speak up, you can unmute and speak too. It's a pretty ordinary question, why?
It just doesn't ask any real specific details, so they could just say yes. So I think the same as your previous example, if you're going to ask this, you have to have specific follow-up questions ready.
Great. What would one of your follow-up questions be, Kathleen?
Can you give an example of give an example of a detail-oriented task that they performed for you, or
yep,
yeah, something like that.
Good. And detail-oriented is a catch-22. I'm going to be completely honest. So I would say, I wouldn't ask it like this. I would ask, is this person appropriately detail-oriented? And the word appropriately is very important, because sometimes people are so detail-oriented, they can't get any work done. They spend longer organizing things than actually doing anything. So I say, is this person appropriately detail-oriented? Give me an example. And then I'll say, has there been a time when this person's attention to detail has impaired their productivity? So that's my follow-up question for that. Has it ever impaired their productivity? You'd be surprised at the number of times the answer is yes. Right, so we're winding down. So let me finish off up here. Oh, it does not want to go full screen. Oh, there we go. Okay, so people are really interested in retention. This starts before the start date. If you've chosen a person, make them feel welcome. Let them know your expectations. Retention only happens when people know what to expect, know how to be successful, and can move forward. Same for PRA, postdoc, student. Give them the details if they're not from campus. If you've got a student coming from Boulder, they don't know where to park. The dress code's very different in a clinical situation here than it is on campus in Boulder. What orientations will they have to do, and what times are they, so they can plan ahead? Discuss what success looks like. Convey the desired culture and climate in your group. Give people a timeline. This is really important with postdocs and students.
Let them know it's super important with the PRAs as well. Let them know that let's work out a timeline. It's flexible, but it gives us goals. And if we don't meet them, we can rearrange, but we need a plan, right? Otherwise, you're not going to get out of here and finish your program requirements. Do you have an open door policy? Be honest with yourself. And I would say that professional development is always the key to retention. You've got to be invested in that person. They're going to leave. So this is something that I actually developed before COVID-19, and I look back on it and I think it's exactly the same. You have to create happiness and work satisfaction or people will leave. Most people who are in an academic environment need a challenge. So I keep a list of Janine specials. It's a spreadsheet on a shared drive. When people have time, there's ideas for papers there. There's ideas for process improvement projects there. There's ideas for, oh, sorry, I don't know what I just did. There's ideas for organizational projects. There are people that have been watching too many DIY shows sometimes and they want to reorganize a freezer. Do we need that? You know, pop it on a list and people can pick things when they're ready for the next step. That find their passion, help them work within and around that. You have to extend their skill sets and give them new responsibilities. Give students something that they have ownership of. Give postdocs someone to help supervise. That kind of thing really makes people feel like they've got an important role and helps them step up and move forward. Always value people's experience and point of view. And this has been really hard, I would say, and people ask me about this during COVID. We are so obsessed with research rollbacks and funding and gaps and, oh my gosh, you know, money and am I ever going to finish this study before I leave the institution? Whatever it is. We've been so concerned about these high level things. The way to help people and keep them interested and engaged during COVID-19 is to focus on them, check in on them, check that they're still moving forward and feeling productive. Despite all the chaos out here, are you okay? I'm going to look you in the eye and say, are you okay? Do you feel like you're being productive? People are afraid to take days off for some reason right now. Take a couple of days off. You just relax. Come back, we'll chat again, right? Focus on them. That will really help. And model behavior. Take a day off yourself instead of being cranky and annoyed, okay? Take a day off. It's okay. So one of the things I did for training, people asked about remote training. I have retooled my whole training scheme and broken it into modules, which I've never done before. It took a lot of time to train 2 new staff. I'm going to do it for 2 more in a minute. But I actually spent almost a whole day orienting 2 new people in a way I've never done before. And I actually think I'm going to continue doing it. And I did it because of COVID. We had this thing about, we didn't know each other. What are the meeting rules? Is it okay to pull out? Can I sit, while I'm listening, can I sit on my phone and do whatever? Text, look at Facebook, is that okay? I don't know. I don't know you. You don't know me. So what are our rules, you know? Do we want to get up and exercise every few minutes? What do we like? And then a quick icebreaker question. Then I gave people who still worked here these overview sessions so that they had a role. They were seen as important. And we looked like a team. And then I did something where we did a lightning round where everyone gave 2 slides. One described what makes them happy and one describing what pushes you over the edge or makes you resentful. Some people did work, focused on work, and some people just said in general what makes them happy or resentful. And that let me know a little bit more about these people on the first day and how to work with their preferences. And sort of a bit more, we did a team building exercise in the middle of it based on a free online platform. And I got them to bring a list of things that makes them want to come to work and what they expect of their colleagues in any situation. And then we developed our core values for the group. Now, you can't do this if you're hiring 6 new people every year. But during COVID, even if you're not hiring someone, this was really important to keep existing people engaged. And I would highly recommend doing something so that you make sure that your team is coming together and still feels connected. It let me rejuggle quite a few things for existing team members. Always thank people for good work. Recognize and acknowledge if it was a hard year. I, again, wrote this before COVID because there are lots of reasons people can have a hard year. It's very timely this year. Celebrate achievements. We don't do that. We don't celebrate the fact that we submitted a grant. We don't celebrate the fact, we only celebrate if we get it. Submitting it is 58% of the work. And now it's 98% of the work, right? So celebrate that you submitted it. That's an achievement. Recognize that.
And if you hire someone, it's your responsibility to address problems promptly. If you don't, and this is on you, if you go, I'm afraid, I don't want to speak to that person, good people will leave. So part of retention is you addressing things in real time and doing it promptly. This is our last pop in. So if you want to go back. We have, what are the core values? These are great. Integrity, accountability, authenticity is a fantastic one. Adaptability, rigor. Oh, I love rigor. Positivity, teamwork, respect, humble, polite. Great. These are all great. Great, great. And then I have a question for all of you. Whatever these might be for your lab, have you consistently reinforced these during COVID-19? This is something you can focus on to make this work. If you focus on those core values, you will have more success engaging your team. All right. I had a few slides on what to do when things go wrong, but we're not going to go there. What I'm going to do is wrap it up and go to the last pop-in question. And anyone who has time, I need to shoot it back to Anne for some announcements, but I can stay for a few minutes to answer any of your questions. So feel free to stay on for a few minutes. Okay. Nobody was walking their dog? Okay, good. It was fun. Good, great. I'm really happy. So I didn't splat on the mat, which is great. So let me unshare, pass back to Anne for the announcements, and anyone who thank you again for your participation and your time. Really think about what we talked about and what the exercises you did today, and try and carry those forward into your next hire and stay focused. You can do it. You will make the right choice. And I can guarantee you at least once in your life, you'll make the wrong choice. And if you do that, reach out to me. Happy to help, happy to hear your drama. But yeah, so let me pass it back to Anne. Thank you for your time. I appreciate very much you being here and participating.
Well, thank you very much. It was great.
Yes, thank you so much, Janine. So as always, we will have an evaluation. If you could please fill that out, and we will also attach the slides to the evaluation. Thank you to those of you who joined us for our annual community event on Wednesday, which replaced our luncheon. If you weren't able to join us, the recording is posted on the website featuring Lori Santos on the science of well-being. We're working on scheduling a training in December related to technical writing, so we will share details as soon as that is confirmed. And then finally, please save the date for our Women's Health Research Day, which is on January 11th from 9 to 10 a.m. This is usually where we have a poster show and a keynote speaker. This year will be virtual, and we will not have a poster session, but we will have a really great keynote speaker, Dr. Patty Gabeau, who is the CEO of Denver Health for 20 years and is an expert on leadership in healthcare. The title of her talk is Women in American Healthcare, Problems and Promise. There will also be a special session for CWHR researchers with Dr. Gabeau, so we will send details out once we come closer to that date. And if anyone does have any questions, thank you, Janine, for sticking on.
And Judy, I know that I can see you now. I don't know if you wanted to give any comments or anything.
Janine, thank you. And I so apologize for being late. I had a
Not at all.
fire to deal with. So hi, everyone. Good to see you all. And thanks to those who came to our luncheon. Quote, there was no food, but hopefully you enjoyed it. And it was, she was such a pleasure to work with. Dr. Santos is an amazing person, and I feel very fortunate that we had her. Janine, I resonated with many of the points you made. I thought you did an absolutely beautiful talk. One of those, though, that I want to amplify is that I call every reference still myself. And I look for those hidden messages that are in the responses, like a long pause when you say, would you hire this person again? And there's a pause. That's almost always not a good thing.
Yeah.
If somebody said that they cried when the person left, that's another thing.
Well, and you get the idea. Calling is so important. You can't do that via email. I actually didn't point that out strongly enough. You can get people's email. They're going to just write bullet points. You can't get an idea of their enthusiasm. For some candidates, their referees cannot say enough good things. Like, you almost have to stop them because it's going to take forever. They're so excited and so enthusiastic about the person. Whereas other people are like, yes, no, which in an email, I might not be able to distinguish the two. And I have to keep asking follow-up questions. And that makes me realize that they're really trying to say as little as possible, which isn't a good sign.
And then you have to sort it out from their personality, which might be a dour personality, might not want to say anything good about anybody. So but if the person gave that as a reference, that person, then that suggests some lapse in judgment as well.
Exactly. Does anyone have anything specifically they're struggling with that they would like an answer to?
Oh, come on. Everybody's got perfect PRA and colleague working relationships. It's amazing and wonderful.
I guess I have a question then for Janine. In the cases of maybe a not great fit, what are the steps that you maybe start to, or that, you know what I mean, that you start to put into place to make changes?
And I think that's a great question, Josie. Even when someone's a great fit, I've had the most amazing people. Sometimes something happens in someone's life and they're off the boil. They're off,
yeah.
off. And you give them a little leeway because they've always been great. But if you keep giving them leeway, everyone else starts getting agitated and everyone will go off the boil. It's a disaster. So the thing to do is give people a little leeway if they're normally good. And if they're not, don't give them leeway and call them in and say, hey, I always talk about it from your point of view. You don't want to attack someone and say, you didn't do this and you didn't do that. And I hated how you said this or whatever. Hey, I noticed in meeting the other day, you didn't contribute at all. Is everything okay? Just a question. They can choose to answer it, not answer it. So you start very gently. Is everything okay? I noticed this or I noticed that. Or normally when you give me data, it's really on the ball. There were quite a lot of errors this time. Is there something going on? Are there distractions? And that sometimes, for most people, that will be enough to go, oh, she noticed, and refocus, right? So it's just most people it's getting to refocus. Then there are other people that are just paralyzed. A little refocus is not going to help those people, and you are going to have to call them. Again, this is all effort on your part, but if you do it gently at the beginning and start early, it's easy. If you wait until it's a complete disaster and you want to fire them, you have waited way too late and you can't fire someone, so it's not going to work out. So if you can't refocus them gently, you become more direct. You start saying, look, the way you're behaving is affecting the whole team. The data's always got errors. Someone has to go back and fix them. I'm frustrated because I'm trying to, and again, make it about you. Explain the personal impact, not you did something wrong. It impacts these people and it impacts me because I'm trying to write papers and grants to get money to support the lab. And if everything has to be reworked 2 or 3 or 4 times, I'm not meeting my deadline and I'm starting to get concerned that, I won't have enough money to support the lab. So you sort of let them realize what the impact is. So that's step 2. And step 3 is you should have documented this. If you don't have a file for every person you employ that you pay on your own personal drive, you're making a mistake. I've got files with people's names on them that are empty. I've never documented anything. Sometimes I document good things so I remember them at review time as well. But I start documenting. This person was late on this day. This person was distracted at this meeting, because I forget, right? I forget how many times someone's been distracted. But if I look back and go to make an entry that someone was distracted at group meeting, and it's happened every week for a month, I need to ask why. So once you get to the HR point, you should have documented that, and then you need to rely on HR's help. They will help you.
Do you make people aware of those documentation instances?
Not unless I get to the HR point normally. I normally make it a discussion. Unless they need a written performance improvement plan. So if they need a written performance improvement plan, and some people do, not a formal one through HR, but sometimes you need to write down for people, Here's what's been happening, or here's the issue. I frame the issue and say, here's how to fix it. And here's the timeline. Don't ever forget the timeline. Don't just say, here's how to fix it. Because when you check in 3 months and they say, oh, I thought I had a year to fix this. So there's always a timeline for improvements, I would say.
Thank you.
It's hard. It's exhausting when there are performance issues. But I can tell you that the more energy you invest over time prevents a complete destruction of your life for 6 months or more.
Well, thank you very much, Janine. That was spectacular, and I hope you'll consider speaking for us in the future again.
Judy, you weren't here, but I'm so honoured to be asked to speak, and always excited to speak to this group. I love the Centre for Women's Health Research and all that it does for all of our faculty. So anytime you ask, I will say yes. I'm really honoured and excited.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for your investment in time. I hope you have something to take away. I've got some things to steal, so I hope you all do too. Lovely to meet all of you that I haven't met before.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you. Bye.